Friends and viewers, good day. The Rime of Ancient Mariner. This is a poem written by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, a famous romantic poet, well known in the field of literature. Samuel Taylor Coleridge had written the Rime of Ancient Mariner. So the poem begins by introducing the ancient mariner who, with his glittering eye, stops a wedding guest from attending a nearby wedding celebration. The mariner stops the young man to tell him the story of a ship, providing no introduction but simply beginning his tale. Despite the wedding guest's efforts to leave, the mariner continues to speak. The mariner's story begins with the ship leaving harbor and sailing southward. A tremendous storm then blows the ship even further to the South Pole, where the crew are awed as they encounter mist, snow, cold, and giant glacier. An albatross breaks the pristine lifelessness of the Antarctic. The sailor greets it as a good omen, and a new wind rises up, propelling the ship. Day after day, the albatross appearing in the morning when the sailor called for it, and soaring behind the ship. But then, as the other sailors cried out in dismay, the mariner, for the reason unexplained, shoots and kills the albatross as his crossbow. At first, the other sailors are furious with the mariner for killing the bird, which they believed a good omen and responsible for making the breezes blow. But after the bird has been killed, the fog clears and the fair breezes continues, blowing the ship north into the Pacific. And the crew comes to believe the bird was the source of the fog and mist, and that killing is justified. It is then that the wind ceases and the ship becomes trapped in a vast, calm sea. The sailors and the mariner become increasingly thirsty, and some sailor dream that an angered spirit has followed them from the pole. The crew then hangs the albatross around the mariner's neck. In this terrible calm, trapped completely by the watery ocean, and they cannot drink, the man on the ship grow so thirsty that they cannot even speak. Even the mariner sees that he believes as a ship approaching, he must bite his arm and drink his own blood so that he is able to alert the crew, who all grin out of joy, but the joy fades as the ghostly ships, which sails without wind, approaches on its deck. Death and life in death gamble with dice for the lives of the sailor and the mariner. After life in death wins the soul of the mariner, the sailor began to die of thirst, failing to deck one by one, each staring at the mariner in reproach. Surrounded by the dead sailor and cursed continuously by their gaze, the mariner tries to turn his eyes towards heaven to pray, but fails. It's only in the moonlight, after enduring the horror of being only one alive among the dead crew, that the mariner notices beautiful water snakes swimming beside the ship. At this moment, he becomes inspired, and he has a spiritual realization that all of God's creatures are beautiful and must be treated with respect and reverence. With this realization, he is finally able to pray, and all the albatross fall from his neck and sunk into the sea. The mariner falls into a kind of stupor and then wakes to find the dead sailor bodies reanimated by the angels and at work on the ship. Powered by the spirit from the South Pole, The ship races on homeward, where the mariner sees a choir of angels leave the bodies of the deceased sailor. After this angel chorus, the mariner perceives a small boat on which a pilot, the pilot's boy, and a hermit approach. As they get closer, the mariner's ship suddenly sinks, but he wakes to find himself in the pilot's boat. When the mariners speak, the pilot and the hermit are stunned by fear. The hermit prays, the mariner in turn saves his own savior and rows them to land, where he begs the hermit to grant him his absolution for his sins. The hermit crosses himself and asks the mariner, "What manner of man art thou?" The mariner then feels compelled to tell his story. The mariner concludes his tale by explaining that as he travels from land to land, he is always plagued by the same compulsion to tell his tale, that he experiences a peculiar agony if he doesn't give it into his urge to share the story, and that he can't tell just from looking at their faces, which man must hear his tale. He ends with the explicit lesson that a prayer is greatest joy in life, and the best prayer come from love and reverence of all God's creation. Thus he moves onward to find the next person who must hear his story, leaving the wedding guest as sadder and wiser. So this is the story and the summary of The Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Coleridge, a great romantic poet, and this poetry is written about at the Rime of Ancient Mariner. So Samuel Taylor, let me tell you about this poet. He was born in 1772 in Devon, England, as the youngest and 14 children of Reverend John Coleridge. A brilliant student and a philosopher, Coleridge wrote renowned literary criticism as well as poetry. He traveled extensively in his life. He published a joint work, ballad, and